Good afternoon, everybody. David Shuster here on Take Action News. So glad to have you with us on this Saturday, December the 8th edition of our show. For all of you who are listening over affiliated stations in Chicago and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Oklahoma, thank you so much for being with us. Also for everybody here in Washington, D.C., and a special shout out to some of you who are now watching us on YouTube. Yes, this show is now sliced and diced and put on YouTube. You can find it at Take Action News TV for the YouTube edition. And this is the start of some really impressive broadcasting, trust me. So thanks everybody for being with us. We always start the show by talking about what's going on in the world of politics and what you can do to influence outcomes. And there's no greater outcome you can have right now than to register with your member of Congress about the debt ceiling and the deficit negotiations that are going on between the Obama administration and Congress. Everybody here in Washington, everybody seems concerned about, oh my God, we've got to do something about the deficit. We got to close the deficit. And so there's an opportunity at the end of this year because the Bush tax cuts are due to expire on December 31st. If nothing gets done, then taxes get raised on everybody across the board January the 1st. President Obama says, well, wait a second. Let's extend the Bush tax cuts for everybody making less than $200,000, but let's let them go up on people who are making more than $200,000 because the president, as he pledged during his campaign, he said, look, we ought to ask the wealthy to pay their fair share, to pay a little bit more. The president is standing firm. Negotiations with Republicans who are holding out for protection for the wealthy. Well, those negotiations seem a little bit stuck, but the president is doubling down. Here's the president in an interview with Bloomberg News about deficit reduction. Listen.
If we're going to be serious about reducing our deficit while still being able to invest in things like education and research and development that are important to our growth, and if we're going to protect middle-class families, then we're going to have higher rates for the wealthiest Americans, folks like me.
The rates the president is talking about going from 36% to 39%. In other words, exactly what they were during the Clinton administration. Republicans say, no, you cannot allow taxes to go up on anybody. A number of Republicans have said that they will not go along with that sort of deal. And John Boehner has been pretty outspoken saying that, no, we should try to find revenue in other ways by closing tax loopholes. Well, again, in that same interview with Bloomberg News, President Obama stood firm and he said, no, the wealthiest 2%, they are going to have to agree, the folks are going to have to agree to let the taxes go up on the wealthiest 2% or there's no deal. Here's the president.
We're going to have to see the rates on the top 2% go up, and we're not going to be able to get a deal without it.
Not going to be able to get a deal without it. And by the way, Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner reinforced that on some of the Sunday talk shows, saying there will be no deal unless the Republicans acquiesce, unless they agree that taxes will go up on the wealthiest 2%. Well, John Boehner is complaining. John Boehner says that from the beginning, he says, Republicans have been willing to put revenue on the table in terms of closing loopholes and allowing fees and whatnot to go up. But he says that the Democrats, the Obama administration, have not provided him or the Republicans with anything in response, and Boehner says that he is therefore exposed on this issue.
I took a great risk. And then the White House spends 3 weeks trying to develop a proposal, and they send one up here that calls for $1.6 trillion in new taxes, calls for a little, not even $400 billion in cuts, and they want to have this extra spending that's actually greater than the amount they're willing to cut. I mean, it was not a serious proposal.
Well, the White House is so deadly serious about this that the president has had campaign-style events in Pennsylvania and other states in which he's trying to rally the American people to put pressure on their members of Congress. The president points out that if taxes are allowed to go up, if Congress does nothing at the end of the year, the average family of 4 in this country will see their taxes go up by $2,000. So the president has encouraged people to contact their member of Congress, to send Twitter messages, Facebook. It's an all-out campaign that the White House is launching to try to pressure Republicans into accepting that the tax rates will go up on the wealthiest Americans. Well, a lot of conservatives suggest that the president is simply playing politics and is not focused on good policy. And some of the language from the Republican right has been astounding. Here's Charles Krauthammer. He's a columnist and also a commentator on Fox News.
He wants to break the back of Republicans. This is a continuation of his campaign. He thinks he won it, and now he wants to drive a stake through the Republicans. It's all about politics. It's nothing about economics.
Well, you do have some economists who are saying, sure. I mean, if you really want to balance, if you really want to bring the deficit under control, the best thing to do would be for Congress to do nothing. If that's the issue, if the issue is, well, we need to bring in more money, then raise taxes on everybody. That's the best thing that could be done. It may hurt the economy to have so many Americans hurting because suddenly they're going to owe more to the IRS. And that's why the president is saying, look, for most Americans, let's continue the relief. The Democratic leader in the House, Nancy Pelosi, she has coined an interesting phrase for what the Republicans are doing. And again, keep in mind that as of this show, the Republicans still have not agreed to any sort of deal. They're still holding out, saying we're not going to agree to a deal if taxes go up on the wealthiest 2%. And Nancy Pelosi has coined an interesting term. Here's the Democratic leader in the House.
That's not negotiating. That's hostage taking. So today on the floor of the House, the Democrats have proposed a discharge petition, which if it receives 218 signatures, that's only a couple dozen Republicans joining the Democrats, it would automatically come to the floor, and I predict would receive the overwhelming support of the House of Representatives.
So two things there. She called it hostage taking. The Republicans are engaged in hostage taking. And then she also introduced a term called discharge petition. Without getting into the nuances of what a discharge petition is, it's essentially a maneuver in which the Democrats are allowed to bring an issue to the floor where it gets a vote. It doesn't require support from the House Speaker in order to bring it to the floor. And so there are a number of lawmakers, even some Republicans, who privately say, you know what, this may be the way that this gets done. And then you have Republicans who they don't want to be held responsible. They don't want to be blamed for taxes going up on everybody at the end of the year. So they're going to allow a vote, and this is the way that they're going to do it, through what's known as a discharge petition. And here's one of the things to keep in mind politically about all of this. And that is the American people, in a poll that was just done, I believe it was the National Journal, 55% said that if we go over the fiscal cliff, if taxes go up on everybody, if nothing is done, 55% say the Republicans will be to blame. Only 27% say that President Obama would be to blame. And oh, by the way, among Republicans, just the Republicans who were surveyed, something like 16% said, oh yeah, the Republican Party would be to blame if this doesn't get done. So the Republicans are behind the 8 ball on this. They're the ones who are in some trouble. And yet, despite it all, and again, the Republicans, they're not giving in just yet. They're not agreeing to a compromise. They're not trying to negotiate on other issues. They're simply saying, no, we're not going to agree to a deal. And too bad. Fiscal cliff, too bad. Well, with the president playing hardball here politically, saying, well, you know what? Then we're going to go over the fiscal cliff, and it'll be the Republicans' fault. And oh, by the way, the president is also saying we're also going to demand that as any sort of deal, the Republicans agree to an extension of the debt ceiling, which is an issue that came up a year and a half ago. The president is playing political hardball here. He's taking the intransigence of the Republican Party and he's meeting it instead of the compromises, the self-imposed compromises that President Obama was so famous for in his first term. The president is playing tough. And the president playing tough and going all out campaign mode on this issue, well, it has the wise pundits of Washington infuriated. They're mad that the president's not being pragmatic, that he's not being high-minded, and they are accusing the president and they're accusing Democrats of humiliating Republicans, humiliating them. Here's David Gergen on CNN.
Since this election, there have been, I think the Democrats are the ones who are really trying to rub it in and almost humiliate the Republicans, and that's not going to get to a bargain. Again, I think it has to be win-win.
I think it has to be win-win. And again, you've had a number of wise men of Washington who say the Democrats are humiliating Republicans, that there's nothing high-minded about the president's approach. Well, I've got news for everybody. For everybody who's mad that the president's not being high-minded, look who he's dealing with. The president is dealing with Republicans who have done everything possible over the last 4 years to block this administration. Why should the president be high-minded when he's had to deal with a Republican Party that has questioned his citizenship, said that he hates America, says that he's out to destroy America, and all of a sudden the president's in a better political position, and you've got these wise men of Washington who are demanding, oh, the president's got to be pragmatic, he's got to be high-minded, he's got to extend an olive branch to the Republicans. No, he doesn't. He just has to win. He won this election. He is entitled to win this political battle, and he will if he sticks to his guns. If the president continues to infuriate the punditry in Washington, trust me, folks, he's going to win this thing. Do exactly the opposite of what the pundits in Washington are saying right now, Mr. President, and you're going to win this thing. Don't compromise. The Republicans are not interested in compromising. They haven't compromised one bit. So why should the president? He's got a winning hand. And everybody knows that at the end of this thing, the Republicans are going to be the ones who play chicken. They're going to be the ones who are going to blink and going to say, okay, we're not going over the fiscal cliff. We'll give in. Everybody knows that. Republicans cannot afford to have the nation continue like this with this policy and have the tax cuts go up on everybody. And furthermore, the American people get that it'll be the Republicans' fault. So this malarkey about compromising and be high-minded and stop rubbing it in. Come on. The White House knows what it's doing. It's playing tough. And for every progressive Democrat out there who was infuriated at the way the president handled negotiations in the first term, when he negotiated with himself, when he compromised with himself, when he made deals before he was even able to see whether the other side would be interested in making a deal. This is a new form of President Obama, and it's about time. And it's why things that progressives care about are going to get done. It's why taxes are going to go up. The wealthiest on the wealthiest, they're going to be asked to pay more of their fair share, and that money is going to be able to help us invest in things like education and new energy sectors and all the sort of things that we need to do to invest in our future. But if you want to contact your member of Congress, I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you on this. Use our Take Action News tool, PopVox, on TakeActionNews.com. We'll be back with a little more on the other side of this break, including a disturbing report about corporate profits and wages across our country. You're listening and watching the Take Action News.